All right, guys, welcome to the Our Modern Heritage, the Home and Family Culture podcast. I'm your host, Jody Chafee, and I am so excited today to bring Ruth and Robert Verbree onto the podcast. And let me tell you about Ruth and Robert. They're awesome, you guys. This is so exciting. Okay, so both of them are award-winning authors and international speakers and have shared the stage with Les Brown, Bob Proctor, and Raymond Aaron, to name a few. Their story will resonate with you as they talk about coping with day-to-day stressors and the big stressors in life. You guys, I love this topic so much. I'm so excited to have you. Say hello, Ruth and Robert.
Hi, how are you doing? Glad to be on your podcast. I'm excited too.
And we're very excited to be here. And we love this topic and we love what you're doing about family culture.
Absolutely.
It's fabulous.
It's huge. And what really resonates with me so much is family culture doesn't have any borders at all. It's universal.
And
Yes.
mental wellness.
Yes.
Mental wellness or mental fitness has no borders.
Right.
Stress is everywhere.
Yeah, right. Well, I love this topic so much as it relates to family culture, coping and stressors and mental health and things like that, because what I've observed and what my research and things and what I've come to conclude is that the way that we cope with our stressors, that day-to-day or the long-term big stressors, that often is what becomes our family culture, because those are like the norms, the habits that we pick up by stress, the way that we cope with stress, the way that we, decompress, or, the things that we want to do at the end of the day or throughout the day, or anytime we get triggered by stressors, that becomes like the norm of their family. When you think about the way that we cope with something, that if we get triggered by our spouse or the politics or whatever, life,
The
and we get
coronavirus.
right, like that becomes like our response, which becomes, oh, that's what's normal. Have you
So really
noticed
what
that?
you're saying in a way is what you think about expands.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
It's the way that, if we as parents model certain behaviors, then our children are going to pick up on those behaviors.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, so fascinating. So how did you come to this understanding? Like where did this begin for you guys to know that understanding how to cope with our stressors is so important?
Well, I'll just begin by saying we have a journey that we went on together, and we have each written a book about, like, I have one from my perspective and he has one from his perspective. So I'm just going to let Robert share a little bit about how this all happened.
Cool.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that we've been married for 38 years. And of course, anybody who's been married for a while understands that in itself can sometimes bring stress, right? Yeah.
And children.
And then you put children in the mix there. I think very early on, one of the things that Ruth and I had to understand and learn is that if we disagreed on a topic, whether it was discipline or whatever it was with the children, we needed to go into our room there or wherever it was, or go for coffee, and then decide on what our resolution was going to be, and then come out united.
Yeah.
And that was such a huge thing to understand that, and it took us a little while too. And often it meant a compromise, but that was okay. That's really what friendship is about, is learning to respect and love your best friend's stuff.
I love that.
So then I'll just carry on from there.
Yeah.
Robert was a police officer, and in Canada, he was in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. We call it RCMP. And so he lived a life of stress. Every day he went to work, there was stress every day pounding at him. And so he did this career and he served his country for 35 years. And in the 35 years, he only had one debriefing, and that was at 33 and a half years of service. So if you can imagine, a normal person goes through stressors. Like, we all have stress. Raising children is stress, But if you can imagine a police officer or any first responder, what you and I, a normal person, the kind of stress or trauma that we see in our whole lifetime is what a police officer sees every single month.
Every day, yeah.
Wow. Every month, yeah. So 70 years of a life, a police officer sees in a month. So imagine that over 35 years. And then he only had one
And you're
degree.
still smiling. I think I think that's pretty impressive. You're okay.
Well, thank you.
I want to hear
I'm
what you
good.
have to say.
I'm
No?
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
yeah, my head is on a little bit cross-threaded. You can see that sometimes, right? It is.
No, he's doing very well.
I'm doing.
In fact, one
Wow.
of our friends just told him this week that he's finally getting back to his self again. So I got to back up a little bit and say that after 35 years, we were expecting to come into the best phase of our life together. And it actually turned out to be the absolute worst.
Wow.
After living a life together, most first responders and their wives don't survive a marriage together, let alone what we went through after he retired.
Mm-hmm.
He fell victim to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and he almost committed suicide, and it was absolutely devastating. But through that whole journey, in the bottom of my heart, in my core being, I knew there was a purpose in this. And so it was a long, long road up. It was a long, long, hard journey. But we became passionate about mental wellness, mental fitness, I like to call it, because just like physical exercise, you can exercise your muscles. And with mental fitness, you can exercise your mind. And it all works together. And now, Robert, you can see he is doing well.
Well, right. But that journey, it happened to me in late 2014 and 2015.
Okay.
And that's been a long journey. Here we are in 2020 now. And I can even say that it's only really now that I have begun to feel human well. But it's been a struggle to do all those things. And it's been a choice also.
Yeah.
And I chose, I didn't want to take the medication route. Now, I want to be very clear, because sometimes medication is very, very necessary to get you over that wall or that hump.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that too.
And I had to do that because one of my big pieces was that I had to break the no sleep cycle. That was huge. There was a lot of other things too. And one of the things that I think is such a good visual picture of what person with mental illness has is, or mental challenges is better probably. Picture a mom and a dad with two kids out biking. And the boy is behind and he can't keep up. And the parents say, son, you got to pedal harder. You got to keep up with the family.
And he's going like this as hard as he can.
Right, as hard as he can. Yeah.
And he says, I'm going as hard as I can go. And the mom and dad are just really not switched on to this in the sense that they haven't looked at his bike or anything else. They just think he's kind of lagging behind. At the end of the day, the dad looks at the bike and the brakes are stuck on. You see, so he's pedaling way harder than everybody else, and he can't keep up, or pedaling harder than everybody else to keep up. Well, that is a very good picture of the way it's been for me in the last 4.5 years.
Wow.
Like mentally, it's been a real challenge to keep up.
Wow. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing this experience. I know that it takes courage to just talk about these things, and I want to be able to, I love having you here to be able to talk about this and get rid of this stigma around mental issues, that it's like, this is just like if your organs are sick or you break a bone or things like that. We need to acknowledge that this is something that we can help with, and that it just takes love and care. And I love that image of
well, and I just wanted to say also is that mental illness or mental challenges is a real paradox, because you feel anxious, you're depressed, and you don't want to talk to anybody, but the thing you need to do is to talk to people, right? But you don't feel like it.
You want to
isolate yourself. You feel anxious, so you're angry and don't want to be in any kind of a commotion or anything like that. So those are some of the real challenges right there. That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead, Ruth.
Like you just said, like you can break a bone, and say your child breaks a bone, you go to the doctor, because this happened with our son. You go to the doctor, you get a cast on, and like our son actually broke his femur, and he was in a hip spica cast.
Wow.
And I needed help.
Yeah.
So like he broke his bone. I needed help to help care for everybody, for babysitting my other children, because he had to be in hospital in traction. Like it was just a disaster. But you're not afraid to ask for help. Like what
Right.
you're not
Because it's
afraid.
obvious.
Yeah, it's obvious that I need help. But when you have an inner turmoil, an inner hurt, nobody sees it. And then we put on a mask, and we
Yep.
don't want anybody to know, so that like our Facebook pages and our life when we're out and about, we all look put together and we have this smile on our face when inside we're just dying.
Right.
Wow.
So we've really
So
become
that, yeah, I love this so much. So like I saw this post the other day that somebody put up that was like, I get that depression is legitimate, right? It's a real thing. But if you aren't getting outside, or you're not exercising, you're not connecting with people, then you are dooming yourself. And it was like, okay, but do you understand that for people with depression, those things make them want to cry? Like basic things. And it's like, I've experienced that, where it's just like, yeah, I would love to be able to get out and just go out for a walk, to get outside and get some sunshine. But the thought of that makes me want to cry because I get so anxious about it, And so it's like, it people who don't understand that, just like, why can't you just get up? Why can't you just go to talk to somebody? Or why can't you go call somebody, or get outside and exercise? And it's like, because it's that hard to
Yes.
That's
do
right.
even those basic things.
Right, because when he was really, really ill, he couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
Like if he walked down the stairs and opened the door, that was a good day.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what you're saying, some people, like it takes a while. You have to resolve in yourself that you want to get better. You have to make a choice, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And if opening the door and taking a breath of fresh air is what you can do today, then do that. Because every little micro step, each micro step puts you further and further ahead.
So one other thing I think that we need to mention too is, in that whole world, and in the military world, like I was in a paramilitary organization,
Mm-hmm.
but in the military, both in Canada and the United States, with paramedics, with doctors,
Correction officers.
corrections, you see, we're taught, we're all part of this culture, and we're taught that you have to suppress it, push it inside, and you don't
Right.
talk about it, you suck it up. And for me in particular, in my job, if I would have given any indication that I was struggling mentally, my career was done. They would have kept me there, but there would be no chance for advancement, anything at all like that. And that kind of idea still exists in many, many places.
Right.
And that is one of the challenges that we have to get through.
Yeah.
Because it holds them back, because they don't want to talk about it, because they want to advance. You want to be promoted in your career.
So is that what you would say is what caused really the PTSD? Was that when you retired, suddenly you were like able to release or feel, or, those things just came crashing in, and
Well, for me, it was
trauma
a multiplicity.
Uh-huh.
That was some of it, but all these horrendous events that I was on highway patrol, on traffic, almost my entire career, and a lot of these events that I witnessed and was part of, and I couldn't have the proper emotion at the time because I was
Mm-hmm.
busy. All those things began to just spill out of me. And
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Throughout his whole training, and same with me as a spouse, we had no training.
None.
We had no access to information on mental wellness. We didn't know what signs, what symptoms to look for. And so that is why, like in particular, why we developed our program, the Renewed Mind course, because people need to know what signs and symptoms to look out for. He actually he had PTSD before he retired, and we didn't know it.
We didn't recognize it. We thought I was burned out.
Yeah.
And being burned out is
majorly burned out.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Those things would definitely burn anybody out. So what is the solution? We can't look at what I see in here is that, like, when people, especially in these situations in military, and that we need to give them the chance to speak their trauma.
Yes.
and to not see that as a weakness.
I think we have to also acknowledge, Jody, that it's not just military people and the people who we talked about.
Yeah.
There is a lot of other people out there who witnessed the trauma. You know, in your part of the world, 9/11 was absolutely huge. And there's other things as well where people are dealing with this trauma. And so I've been reading and studying this whole thing a whole lot, and typical ways of dealing with mental illness, they're not as efficient as some of the new things that have come forward.
Interesting.
In fact, last night I was looking at a TED talk there where this doctor is looking at scans of the brain of people with mental illness. And then he tailor makes a program for them so they get well. Another piece that's really important is mental illness really, and this is an oversimplification for you medical people or you medical types that are out there, but an oversimplification. You have fight, flight, and freeze. And so fight and flight, we all can cope with, but this freezing thing, a lot of us get a freeze snapshot in our brain and your brain cannot file it. And so it kind of bounces around inside there and it causes all these conditions like stress, like anxiety and depression. And as it goes on and it's not dealt with, of course, it continues to get worse. And I've totally experienced that. One incident that I went to in 1989, I lugged that thing around with me until last year. And a guy helped me release it. He helped me release that snapshot, that freeze frame in my head.
Wow.
Fascinating.
I just want to say, I want to say too that we've talked about first responders, and Robert just said, you know, there's way more people with PTSD than first responders.
Oh, for sure.
In fact, I want to say right here, women are actually a higher percentage of the majority who have PTSD, and that stems from sexual abuse or physical abuse from being as a child.
Yeah.
And so what I want to say is that the signs and the symptoms are still the same.
Yes.
You know, for women, one of the things that happens to women often is that they just get introverted and they want to isolate themselves. That's their number one go-to. Whereas men, their number one go-to is alcohol. Wow. And that doesn't mean that you don't have all the rest. It's just that's the top for women and men.
Yeah.
But the signs and symptoms are the same, whether you're a first responder and you've dealt with lots of trauma, or whether you were sexually or physically or verbally abused as a child. Those frames and the symptoms are the same. They still have the same feelings, like they just go inward and they need help.
So, and here's another piece of the puzzle, and I know we're talking a lot.
I like listening to you guys. I mean, I have some questions coming brewing, good. But you know, let's see where this goes.
I need to just say this, and then I'll turn off. One thing in the United States and in Canada, and in a lot of ways, we're very connected and very close. The ability, the access to help is so limited. Now, whether that's because of the medical system, because of your insurance, or you can't afford it, or all the doctors are full, they have no more room to take any more patients on, whatever the thing is, that is absolutely such a huge piece. Learning how you can cope with that problem. And so as Ruth just talked about, we have a course, which we hope we can talk to you a little bit about after, which has all those things. It's about the cost of one psychologist visit.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, so this is what I wanted to, so it sounds like, because a lot of times I like to say, if this is something that's so important, what's keeping people from getting help? And well, it's like obvious, the healthcare problem you just mentioned, and the fact that we don't always recognize the symptoms, that we don't always know where to find help, what to do when we feel those things, feeling ashamed of those feelings.
Yes.
And then getting that sense of, I'm freezing, I don't know what to do, I can't do, you know, you just shut down. And so all of those things are huge barriers to getting help and growth. So, okay, so let's go into this idea of like what we can do, especially as it reflects to as on our families, you know, how we can model healthy coping strategies for our children, how we can help our children cope with stress. So what is like your go-to thing to cope with stress?
Well, for me, I'll talk about me, and then Ruth can talk about the breathing technique. But for me,
Mm.
one of the best pieces is when I'm getting stressed or anxious, I just say change, and it's a pattern interrupt. And I
Mm.
need to bring myself back to this present moment and understand that that was then and this is right now.
Kind of shocks your body
It
in a
shocks your
second.
body.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have a little example. A little while ago, we were out walking. And as we were walking, we were close to the freeway. And then 4 ambulances went by, the rescue truck, about 4 or 5 police cars. And right away, I'm in that zone. I'm thinking in my head, what am I going to face in 5 minutes from right now?
It was triggered
Wow.
It
immediately.
was triggered
Yeah.
immediately. And then I just said, change. And I understood then that I just needed to breathe and be in this present moment and say, well, no, that was then. And right now, I'm out for a walk with Ruth. It seems so simple to do that, but learning that one technique right there is absolutely huge.
Wow. And so that's different though from suppressing the feeling,
Yes, it
because
is.
you're not, it's like you go, okay, acknowledge that that happened, and now I can let it go. Just done. Is
Well,
that what would you say is the effect
yeah,
that it has on you?
and I've also learned tapping. You're going to see how crazy I am
Mm.
now. You see, sometimes if I really need
No, my
to do
parents do
something,
that.
I begin to tap, right, and that it really helps me because it does the same thing. It's a
It's
pattern
fascinating.
interrupt, and it brings me to right now.
Mm-hmm.
And another technique that we use is Ho'oponopono. Did I say that right? Ho'oponopono.
Yeah, we won't go into that one
No,
right now.
no. But I think
But yeah.
I think my point is to you and your audience is that there is things that we can do to help. It's not necessarily the cure, but there
Right.
definitely is things that we can learn to help us.
The
I
pattern
think,
interrupt and getting present is a
yeah,
huge, yeah.
being present, getting right into the present moment, focusing on the here and now. And one way to do that is to use all 5 of your senses.
Yes.
That's really, really a healthy thing to do. Like you can go out into nature and do it, you know, or if you're at home, a really good thing to do is to get a lemon. Hold a lemon in your hand. It's a beautiful color, so you're seeing it. It's visual,
Mm-hmm.
and yellow is, you know, a sunshiny thing. It's a color that makes you smile. It's tactile. You feel it. It's kind of smooth, but it's a little bit bumpy. So you think about each of the senses. Then you take a knife, you cut it, and you listen to the sound of cutting it. So that's audible, right? And then you're going to taste it. And you're going to, like, already when you think of a lemon, you
That's
start
gonna wake your taste buds up.
yeah, right? And so use every sense, smell it, you know, those
Yeah.
are the 5 senses. That gets you into the present moment, here and now. But then the other thing that Robert talked about is tactical breathing. That's a wonderful thing that you can use anywhere, any place, inconspicuously. And it's deep breathing. Like you can research and Google deep
Yeah.
breathing, but it's where you inhale and like actually visualizing counting. So like some people say count to the count of 4, some say 5, some say 7. Do whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And actually visualize, like look at your fingers so that you're counting, because that makes you focus on the something. It's present. So you inhale, hold for the count, like you inhale for the count, hold for the count, exhale for the count, hold for the count, and repeat that 3 to 5 times because it makes you focus. It's just another
Wow.
way.
And
like
probably it physically, the higher level of oxygen and oxygenating your brain
Yeah,
and
that's
things
right.
like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Another thought came to me, and it's another visualization, but visualizations are good because we all like pictures in our heads. You know, if you're at home, like yours is podcast is about family culture. So if just think of your home and you have 4 kids or you have 3 kids, whatever the case is, and it's been just a really busy day, and you come home and the kids are all wound up, and then you're making supper, and one of your kids has a total meltdown right there. Well, your
Mhm.
first initial response would be to get angry. But if you can just say, change, and then maybe even start tapping in front of your kids because they'll think you're crazy. But anyhow, just make that change right there. That can often be the thing that'll help you to be in this present moment and then deal with it in a much better way
Yeah. Yeah.
than responding. You'll react. Did I say that right? No, I said it backwards. Instead of reacting, you'll be
Yeah.
able to respond. That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that so much because one of the things that I like to talk about is this idea of trust culture and how it's like, when we can respond rather than react, then reacting creates dissonance and fear. It
Yes,
creates,
it does.
all these different things that, like a situation like that where you just come home and the kids are going crazy, and then somebody has a meltdown. Well, if you get yourself present, you go, oh, we're all just overstimulated. Let's
Yeah.
all get present. Let's all take a
Sure.
minute and breathe.
Yeah.
That's
That would be
right.
a really
Yeah.
great technique. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
And let's take this into the family, mental wellness in the family, because that's
Yeah.
all about family culture. You want your children to be mentally well. You as a parent don't want your children to struggle with issues. And it's so important to talk about it, but you can't talk about it unless you learn about it.
Yeah.
And so that's what's so important. We had no training for that. Yeah, we were healthy people. Like, we exercised and we were physically fit, and we listened to motivational uh, YouTube videos and TED Talks. We talked to our children, we communicated, and we are blessed because we have a great family
Mm-hmm.
dynamic
Mm-hmm.
because we worked on it. And
Mhm.
but if we had known about mental wellness, I know our family could be stronger,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so how do you as a parent right now help your children? Well, you help your children by learning and understanding what mental health even means. We did a survey not very long ago, and out of 35 people, all 35 people thought that mental health meant that you were still crazy. That's how
Right.
bad stigma is.
Yes.
Mental
Yeah.
health means you're working on your health.
Yeah.
So, what can you do? You can understand and learn so that you can help your children.
Wow. Yeah. Huge, huge, huge solution right there.
Yes,
And being
yes,
able
it
to
is.
address your own issues, you might learn from your study. I mean, I think sometimes people are afraid that if they learn about it, they're going to think, I'm going to discover my own mental problems.
That
But
is
that's
exactly right.
so good. We have to be
Key.
willing to face our own triggers and our own, problems and things,
If
or
you
else there's no way we can bring that to the table for our kids.
I know, if you know what your triggers are, it helps you manage your family and have a healthier family culture.
Yeah. And I like that you guys mentioned how this is it's a lot like physical fitness, because with physical fitness, we think about that we need to consistently get our aerobic exercise, or we need to consistently lift weights, or, to see any kind of difference or to maintain health over time, we have to be consistent with our physical health. And so it sounds like if you compare that to mental health, that it's a practice,
It is.
right? So these the things that you suggested, saying, learning how to pause or to tap or to, breathe, that immediately it will work in the moment, but as you practice it more and more,
Yes.
you improve.
Your mind shifts to that much quicker. It's a better mindset. And so,
Yeah.
like, another thing you can do is affirmations. Like, with a
Mm.
family, I don't know if you're up earlier than your children, or sometimes children are up earlier, but if you get up and if you think of an affirmation for that day, give it to your children.
Right.
This is
Exactly.
what we're going to concentrate on today.
Oh, I love that.
You are loved. I am loved. I'm loving myself. You know, set an intention so
Yeah.
that your children see that you're doing it, and give it to them. They can take those intentions to school, the
Wow.
affirmations with them.
So
And
yeah, go
another
ahead.
great one is a gratitude journal. And Ruth and
Ooh.
I do that every day. We sit down and we write out 10 or 12 things that we're grateful for. And of course, in the beginning, you have to stretch your thinking because it's hard to get to the 12, but it's amazing after a little while how that just flows. And then It changes the pathways in your head. You get
Exactly.
rewired.
Yeah.
And then you're thankful for so much. Ruth will say, well, wow, I'm just so thankful that the snow is melting, or I'm so thankful that the sun is shining. And, I say thankful things too. It rewiring those
Yeah.
pathways in your head. And those things are huge. So
Yeah.
I
I
guess
love
what
that
I'm
you're,
saying-
yeah, I love that you're talking about rewiring, because it's like that's okay. If you guys want physical evidence of mental health, right? There's the wire, those myelination of our nerves in our brain, right?
that's
That
right.
they have pathways. And so when you have a consistent pathway to stress, to trauma, to these things that you revert to, that become your like norm, if your child has a meltdown and your immediate reaction is to explode and to react, that's because that's your neural pathway, that's your mental pathway, that's automatic, right? And so in order to change a habit, you see the trigger, and then you have to be able to pause, get present, and then make a choice to do something else. And then as time goes on, you are cognitively rewiring your brain to have a different response to those things. And I'm sorry, I totally just geeked out about this, but
No, it's
that's
awesome.
something that
You said it perfectly.
Yeah, you'll become unconscious competent,
yeah.
Right.
Well,
right?
yeah, that's
great
exactly it. It becomes it's a subconscious thing it becomes an easier, because most of the time we don't recognize what our habits are until
Right.
somebody points out, hey, did you realize that you do this every time this happens? And you're like,
Right.
oh no, I didn't realize that. And so it's learning to know what those triggers are, or becoming present so that you can change. And speaking the affirmations, this is okay. I'm sorry for geeking out. Let me geek
No,
out for just another
that's
minute.
good.
Yeah, go.
Well, because this is something that, my husband and I have been working on a lot, because like of our own depression and mental health issues and trauma and things like that from our lives, that sometimes our reaction is to be like, I just want to be sad. Okay. And I'm like, no, we're going to change we got to rewire, even if all we do is daydream
Yes.
about
Yep.
something good.
And daydream
And
is so good.
yeah, that is something that's going to rewire your brain towards positivity.
Absolutely.
And so I just love that whole idea and how powerful it all is. So thank you so much for bringing this topic up and letting me geek out for a minute.
Oh, that's good.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
we like it a lot too.
Awesome.
We can just go on and on because we're passionate.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love this topic. So thank you so much. And just I want to conclude, but I want to be able to allow you guys to share, a little bit more about your program and where we can find your program.
Well, I think Ruth and I talked about this, and we feel so passionate about this course. And I said earlier on, it's about the cost of one psychologist visit. The name of the program is called A Renewed Mind. So I won't give up the price right here. We've decided on a very good price for your listeners. We're going to give them a real deal, and we'll give that to you after, and you can put that in the show notes and how they can contact us.
I just want to say, how much does a psychology visit cost in your city?
I don't know, but my sister-in-law, I shouldn't say this. Somebody I know. No, they were pricing it out, and they were like lamenting that insurance doesn't cover anything.
Right.
And so it was like, this is so ridiculously expensive. This is something, no wonder people are struggling, because it's so hard to get resources.
It is. And sometimes it's a 2-year wait to see a psychologist.
Oh
right?
my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to say right here where we live, to see a psychologist, it's an hour visit. It's between $250 and $300
for the hour.
For 1 hour. So
wow.
We want to say and tell your listeners that our program was actually written by the psychologist who saved Robert's life. So it's a very, very credible course. It can be used in conjunction. You can use it with your children. It's easy. It's simple to read. There's techniques, and it's easy to navigate through. But we have 18 lessons, and so that's like 18 psychology visits.
Wow.
And the deal that we're going to offer you, you can't refuse it, because it's just a screaming freaking good deal. Because
Awesome.
we want you as parents to be able to train your children, because the
Yeah.
next generation has to be mentally well.
Exactly right.
Oh, I mean, with the rise of, all these studies that talk about child depression, suicide, trauma, all these things. I mean, it's so scary and so
It is.
sad.
It is.
It's so, yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to educate ourselves.
Can I show you a good book?
Yes. I love books.
This is my book. It's available on Amazon. If you want to read some really cool cop stories
It's called
There
My
you go.
Life
and
as
learn
a
about my
Cop.
journey, this is it.
Wow.
There you go.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. I love this topic. I love what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for your work. And I will definitely put in the comments here and in the show notes where to get the renewed mind and to connect with you guys, because this is awesome. So, and you also have a podcast. I posted about it recently because I was honored to be on your podcast, The Brood Awakening. And
We were
so
honored
it was
too.
so great to talk to you guys, and so great to talk to you again for mine. So such a privilege.
And we love what you're doing, Jody. The family, I really believe that family is the number one piece that helps to make our world better.
It's right.
Yep.
So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank
right.
you.
And sometimes it seems like such a daunting task, but one person, and if you can convince another person and that person convince two persons, well, pretty soon we start a real
Movement.
that's the word, a movement.
Yeah. That's
And
the
so
idea.
we can do it.
And you're doing it.
You're
doing
rocking
great
it.
things. Yeah, you're rocking it.
Thanks, you guys. You're so sweet. I really appreciate it. And I do. I really want to make this a movement of bringing families back to the center of society. Like,
Yes,
we
absolutely.
have to strengthen our families. It's really the only way to heal our nation and the world, I believe, personally. So it's, as far as we're talking about mental health and things like that, I feel like that is, so many of the health problems that we have are really stress related, mental health related.
They are.
Even the physical conditions we think about of, heart conditions and diabetes and all those kinds of things. Think about it. Like, they are stress related, or they are a byproduct of our stress, where, we might cope by eating sugary things all the time, or binge watching TV instead of exercising, things like that. Those are stress related activities, that a lot of times. And so it's this ripple effect of just deteriorating our health in general. And I'm really passionate about that. So anyway, cool. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And for those of you listening, watching, thank you so much for watching. And again, you can find Ruth and Robert at their podcast, The Brood Awakening. And you can go, they have a YouTube channel, Ruth Verbree. And I will post a link in the comments, or I'll edit the show notes so that you can go to their website and get the Renewed Mind course. So excited. Awesome. And thank you. I will be going forward. I have to share this a little bit of announcement that going forward, I'm going to be doing watch parties inside of my Facebook group on Fridays for these podcast episodes. And so go look for, Family Culture Hackers is the group name. And so on Fridays, I'll be doing watch parties of the episodes before I post them out to the public as a podcast. So make sure you go and join the group. I'm actually relaunching the group on Monday as hype to get everybody engaged, and doing some challenges and things like that with prizes and stuff. So go and join the group at Family Culture Hackers. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Ruth and Robert. And thanks everyone for listening.
Bye.